pineapple suddenly split into two halves and began releasing a terrifying sound and a massive sphere of magical mana in every direction. Seeing this, little Iona, who was standing behind, immediately extended her staff forward and shouted, "Shield!" At that very moment, a powerful magical protective barrier formed around Sujuin, blocking the terrifying explosion. Breathing heavily and wiping the sweat from his face, while Theo, sitting on his shoulder, trembled in fear. Theo looked at Iona, smiled and said, "Nice job, Iona. Meow. Let's enjoy the peanuts." While Iona happily waved her staff in the air and said, Sujuin let out a sigh of relief and said, "Phew, that was close. Thanks, Iona." Blushing, Iona stepped forward a little and asked, "Then, by any chance, could I have some peanuts?" Smiling, Sujuin replied, "Of course, Iona. Let's enjoy the party together." And behind them, Queuing and Bat also began dancing happily. Sujuin looked carefully at the pineapple again and asked, "Anyway, what's up with this pineapple?" Just then, a blue system notification window flashed before him with the following message. Screaming pineapple, a pineapple grown inside the tower. Upon harvesting, the mana accumulated inside releases a mana-infused shockwave along with a scream-like sound. Grade C. As soon as Sujuin read the notification, he was stunned and shouted, "It explodes when harvested." One after another, 5 new system notification windows flashed before Sujuin. The first announced that he had achieved the remarkable feat of creating a brand new species inside the tower, granting him the exclusive cultivation rights to that species. The second declared that no one could grow the screaming pineapple without his permission. The third informed him that his job experience points had slightly increased. The fourth stated that his harvesting level 6 proficiency had greatly increased. Finally, the fifth notification displayed that only 37 in 123 harvests remained until he completed the harvesting job quest. Letting out a deep sigh, closing his eyes, and looking dejected, Sujuin said, "I can't even farm in peace anymore." Theo immediately rushed over to Sujuin's cheek and said enthusiastically, "Don't worry, Meow. You have us by your side, Sujuin." Behind him, Bat flew happily through the air and said, "That's right." Iona stood there happily holding her staff, and Queuing raised both hands and shouted enthusiastically, "We're here." Hearing their words, a warm smile appeared on Sujuin's face. Holding the pineapple, he walked forward and asked Bat, "You've never had pineapple before, right?" To which Bat did a flip in the air and shouted, "No, I'm so excited." From behind, Iona said in a sweet voice, "Peanuts," and Sujuin smiled and thought, Bat is definitely going to love it. At night, the scene shifted to an office on the top floor of a massive building in the United States, where Gadgel Group Chairman William McLaren was sitting in his chair, looking out the window at the city skyline. Just then, the sound of the door opening was heard, and he said, "Come in." His son entered the office and said, "Chairman." William McLaren turned his chair around, looked at him with slight irritation and said, "Humph, the vice chairman." Before asking, "What is it?" the vice chairman stepped forward and said, "I'm here to report about the Tower Farm project." With a confident and cheerful expression, the vice chairman reported, "We have cleared all the skeleton graves on the second floor of the tower and turned them into X farms, and we are expanding to the third floor. We are currently earning 3,000 tower coins a day. Everything is going smoothly." Stepping forward confidently, he continued, "Didn't I tell you, Father, the Tower Farm project would be a success?" But as soon as he heard this, Chairman William McLaren clicked his tongue in anger. The vice chairman was completely taken aback, and all that came out of his mouth was Chairman William McLaren turned around angrily, glared at his son and said, "I believe I told you not to call me father." Hearing this, the vice chairman broke into a cold sweat and immediately bowed, saying, "I'm sorry, Chairman." Chairman William McLaren slammed his fist onto the desk and shouted, "Everything is going smoothly, you say? Are you satisfied with a mere 3,000 tower coins a day? What about the astronomical amount of money we invested?" Trembling, the vice chairman stammered. "That's Chairman William McLaren shouted at him angrily. "Are you so trapped in that tiny corner of the tower that you can't read the flow of the wider world? The Hunter Association has assessed the locust situation in Africa. The pest eradication support project we secretly negotiated with African nations is about to go down the drain. So whether your tiny little project succeeds or not, I couldn't care less. Get the hell out." As he pointed toward the door, filled with fear and shame, the vice chairman silently walked out of the office. After stepping outside, he clenched his fists tightly in anger and thought with hatred, "What a piece of trash." Clapping his hands happily, Sujuin said, "Yes, good job. That's how you make it." In front of him, a little rabbit jumped around excitedly while holding a piece of rice dough. Just then, Theo, standing beside Sujuin, looked at the round shapes the rabbits had made and asked, Chairman Park, what is this? Meow. Resting his hand on his chin, Sejun thought for a moment and said, if I had to say, it's songpyeon. It's a rice cake we always eat outside the tower during the Chuseok holiday. Chuseok is still a long way off, but you tear off a small piece of rice dough like this, roll it into a ball, and press down in the middle to make it look like a little bowl. Using his hands, Sejun demonstrated how to roll the dough into a bowl shape, while Queuing, Theo, Bat, and all the little rabbits watched carefully and tried to do the same. Continuing his explanation, Sejun said, normally, you'd fill the inside with sesame seeds or beans, but let's fill ours with whatever we like. One little rabbit happily said, I'm using sweet potatoes mixed with honey, while another rabbit said, I'm using mashed boiled carrots. Pulling out Chiru from his pouch, Theo excitedly said, then I'm putting Chiru in mine. Meow. And little Iona, holding peanuts in her paws, asked, then can I put peanuts in mine? Smiling, Sejun replied, of course. Songpyeon with peanuts sounds delicious. Sejun then asked Iona, could you make a few for me, too? And Iona kneaded the dough with her tiny hands and said, sure. Watching her, Sejun laughed and said, haha, but the ones Iona made are a bit too small for me to eat. Just then, Sejun turned around and exclaimed in surprise, on the other hand, that one is way too big, because Queuing was covering an enormous fish with rice dough until it was completely wrapped. Meanwhile, on the other side, a little frog Garen was lying on the ground while the little rabbits covered him with dough saying, I'm going to become a songpyeon, causing Sejun to panic and shout, no, stop that right now. What are you doing? The very next moment, the black dragon Aileen looked through her pink magical sphere at Sejun, who was holding the little frog Garen in his hands and burst into laughter. Just then, a blue system notification window flashed before Sejun with the following message. The tower manager says she wants to try some songpyeon, too. Smiling, Sejun said, oh, of course, Aileen. Then Sejun knelt down and gently placed the little frog Garen back on the ground saying, how should I put it? It started out as a party, but looking up at Sejun, Garen smiled and said, thank you. Looking across the field, Sejun watched all of his friends Queuing, Theo, Iona, Bat, Aileen, and the rabbits cooking, dancing, and playing together. He let out a peaceful sigh from the bottom of his heart and smiled as he thought, it feels like spending the holidays with family. It would have been even better if Black Rabbit, Princess Pia Pia, and the Wolf Tribe kids were here, too. Well, we can just throw another party when we meet again. Sejun called out enthusiastically, all right, everyone bring over the songpyeon you made. Hearing Sejun's voice, Theo and the large white rabbit turned toward him listening attentively. The chubby rabbit stepped forward carrying a large, clean wooden tray filled with all the differently shaped songpyeon everyone had made. Leaning over the tray and examining it carefully, Sejun said, let's see. Wow, these are so cute. You guys are amazing. You're so talented. The tray was filled with tiny flower-shaped, paw-shaped, and round songpyeon. As Sejun picked up a small songpyeon in his hand, Theo, sitting on his shoulder, proudly lifted his chin and said, ahem, did you forget that I have golden hands? Meow. Smiling, Sejun said to everyone, all right, let's steam them now. And upon hearing that, Theo, Bat, and all the little rabbits shouted together happily. Placing a heavy lid on top of a large clay stove, Sejun strained and said, heave-ho. The fire beneath the stove burned fiercely, while Queuing, the little bear standing in front of it, stared greedily at the pot and said, I want to eat them soon. Sejun turned toward Queuing and said, while the songpyeon is steaming, I need your help with something. Widening his eyes in surprise, Queuing asked, what is it? Smiling, Sejun announced, let's make Gary Teok. And as soon as Queuing heard that, his face lit up with overwhelming joy, and he placed both hands on his cheeks and shouted, Gary Teok. Sejun placed magical white rice dough into a large stone mortar and explained to Queuing, all right, just pound this rice dough as much as you want. The more you pound it, the chewier it gets. Holding a huge wooden mallet in his hands, Queuing stepped forward and asked, I should pound this? To which Sejun encouraged him enthusiastically, yep, strike it hard. Queuing shouted with all his might, but he gathered so much energy that a terrifying crimson aura began erupting from the ground. Like a gigantic monster, Queuing leaped into the air, swung the massive mallet with all his strength, and shouted, Bae is going to pound the dough super hard. Sejun broke into a cold sweat in fear and screamed. Queuing leaped unbelievably high into the sky and began crashing down like a terrifying meteor. Seeing this, Sejun stretched both hands into the air and shouted at the top of his lungs. At this rate, the 99th floor is going to collapse. Queuing, stop. But at that critical moment, a black figure shot down from the sky like a bolt of lightning. It was Black Rabbit. Wielding his own massive wooden mallet, Black Rabbit intercepted Qing's attack in midair, stopping the devastating blow before it could hit the ground. The collision of the two mallets sent another powerful shockwave rippling through the air. Qing's eyes widened in surprise. Looking at the familiar figure in front of him, he exclaimed, "Black Rabbit," then turned towards Sujuin and calmly asked, "Have you been well, uncle?" The moment Qing recognized him, his face lit up with both shock and joy as he shouted, "Big brother Black Rabbit,